What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Absolute Strength Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Hunt, and we're back with another episode, and today I am back with a book review. Today's is the third book review we've done, and so far the feedback on the book episodes has been great. I mean, it's amazing because I have a lot of fun doing these, and it's a little bit different. You know, I kind of got burned out, I admit, just doing interviews and Q&As and etc., but I will say I have a bunch of guests lined up for this summer. I don't know, I kind of had like a second wind. I was like, I don't know, one day, it's funny how my mood, it kind of fluctuates a lot, because for a while I was like, you know what, I kind of wanted to get away from doing interviews, and then lately, I don't know, the last week, I was like, I don't know, I feel like I should just do everything. I feel like I should just push interviews, push the book reviews, push the Q&As, and just do everything, and just try to aim for it all. So I have a bunch of interviews scheduled, have a bunch of books lined up that I'm going to go over in, the summer and the future. And then, of course, Q&As and whatnot. So today's book is Sylvester Stallone's book. It's called Sly Moves, My Proven Program to Lose Weight, Build Strength, Gain Willpower, and Live Your Dream. I bought this book, I'm trying to think, I got to look what year this came out, but I think I bought it when it first came out. I was probably in, either middle school or high school. And I was a big Sly Stallone fan. I feel like my generation is like the last generation. I mean, I'm 27, turning 28 in October. But I feel like I'm the last generation that grew up on Rocky and Rambo. Because I did. I mean, I grew up, the book came out in 2005, so I would have been, like a freshman in high school? It's probably the year I got it. I used to go to the mall, and there was what was it called? I think a Walden's bookstore. Like, all malls had them back in the day, Walden bookstores. Then, of course, Amazon came around and just wiped out bookstores left and right. I mean, Barnes & Nobles is still holding strong. I read most of my books. Well, most of my books I read are just ebooks. I just download them, get the ebook and go from there. It's just easier. I've probably 60, 70 books on my iPad. But if I get an actual hardcover book, of course, I'm like everyone else. I just buy them off Amazon. It's convenient. It's cheaper. I mean, 2-day shipping with Prime, whatever. So I admit, I feed into the issue, but I love going into Barnes & Noble. Like, I actually just love it. Like, on a Saturday or something, if walk in, grab a coffee, and then just kind of browse around, and I'll end up buying something occasionally. But, I love going to a bookstore and just browsing. But it's tough to compete with Amazon. And, I of course have my book coming out this fall, and I'm a little nervous that like Barnes & Noble won't pick it up, because I don't really know the ins and outs of the book industry per se, but I can't imagine that they're stocking as many books as they used to. At least it doesn't seem like they are, especially newer books, fitness books, people who aren't like a super big name. I mean, of course, if it was a big name, then they probably would stock it, but it's just little old me writing my first book, first-time author. I don't know if they'll get it. I mean, the publisher made it seem like they would. Maybe that was just part of the negotiation process, which it was. They were like, oh, yeah, I mean, this, Barnes & Noble is going to pick it up. But I was like, okay, well, cool, that sounds nice. But now I'm a little nervous, because obviously I don't know for sure, and I just want to be able to walk into a Barnes & Nobles and see the book. Like, that would be a big time dream for me. And the reason I brought this whole story up is because, like, I remember grabbing this book probably in 2005, probably as a freshman in high school. Every single time I went to the mall, I would go to the bookstore, browse around, look at the fitness section, look at the nutrition section, go look at whatever other fiction books I was reading at the time as well. And it was just, throughout my entire life, I've just always liked going to bookstores, and to actually walk in and grab a physical copy of a book I've written would be a big deal. But who knows? If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. I mean, I love writing, so if all goes well, this won't be my last book. And maybe if I can, maybe build some momentum, so to speak, and sell a couple books, sell a couple copies to everybody. Then maybe next time around, Barnes & Nobles will pick it up. Shit, they might pick it up this time. I don't know. But yeah, so Sly Moves, we're going to talk, he digs into, it's not going to be super detailed. Like, I know the first couple episodes, the book reviews that were long. Well, I mean, the first book took 2 podcasts, and each one was like 2 hours. So it's like 4 hours to go over the first book. And then I think I took 2 hours on the second book, which is really just a pamphlet. So I mean, this is a bigger book, but it's kind of split up into like 3 parts. The first part is really what I want to focus on. Is he talks about himself training for Rocky and Rambo, etc. That's really what I want to focus on. And then the second part, second and third part, he talks about more like what he recommends, like his training and nutrition that he recommends. And he wrote this in 2005, which we'll go over, but I don't want to spend too much detail on that, because really I just want to know what he did when he was training for Rocky and Rambo. And he kind of was like, we'll get into it, but he's kind of like, oh, well, I did that to get in awesome shape, but I don't recommend that anymore. And you'll see why, but we'll dig into it. I think this is going to be cool. I don't think it'll be quite as long, but man, if you grew up watching Rocky and Rambo and you don't really know the details about some of this stuff, we're going to talk a little bit about not only his training, but kind of how those movies came about. It's interesting, so I think you guys will enjoy that. But before we get to the book, got to keep the lights on, talk about a couple things. One, as always, this podcast is sponsored by PR Breaker, the pre-workout I recommend, and the protein powder, the new protein powder Hit Point, which has been, the name's Hit Point. Derek came up with an awesome name because it's been a hit. And I'm not just saying that. I on social media, it's been blowing up. Pretty much everybody that I knew who ordered it has let me know that it's amazing. It's a great protein powder. The chocolate and vanilla, both flavors are amazing, and it's thick. If you like to make a protein pudding, which is pretty much my routine before bed. This is what I have every single night before bed. I'll do a scoop and a half of Hit Point, and right now I've been doing the vanilla. I've been doing the vanilla Hit Point, scoop and a half, about 4 to 6 ounces of almond milk. You can play with it and just kind of try to get a pudding consistency. And then I throw in a handful of dark chocolate chips, about 1 serving. It's about like 15, 20 grams worth of chocolate chips. And then I throw it in the refrigerator for about 10 minutes. Come back, take it out. That's the perfect way to end your night. Like, it tastes like a dessert. The macros are amazing. It's, per scoop, it's like 25 grams of protein, 2 or 3 grams of carbs, and 1.5 grams of fat. So, you can't beat that. Before, I used to use Greek yogurt, and I would just use Greek yogurt mixed with protein powder, but Hit Point is so thick that you don't even need Greek yogurt. You don't even need it. Like before, if I was just using like a whey protein, and I wanted kind of a thicker dessert-style snack before bed as my last meal, I would use Greek yogurt with, a scoop and a half of a whey protein, because whey protein doesn't mix into a pudding very well. It doesn't at all. It's like really thin. So you would need that Greek yogurt as the base to make it, that thick consistency. But with Hit Point, you don't need that at all. Don't need it at all. So, if that sounds good, I highly recommend it. But Hit Point and Materia, of course, got 2 great products. Really, when it comes down to it, what do you really need? When it comes to building muscle, losing fat, gaining performance, what do I always talk about? Hitting your protein, hitting your daily protein. Do you need a protein shake? No, you don't. Nothing magical about it. However, it's hard to be consistent, to live that hashtag consistency life if you're not using a protein powder. It just is. It's very hard. You can do it, but it almost becomes a part-time job, like cooking all the meals and prepping and making sure you're going to the grocery store, et cetera, et cetera. If you can knock out 50 grams of your daily protein intake with 2 scoops of a protein powder, like, you're just that far ahead. You start your day with 50 grams. Like, I'm going to have 2 scoops of protein, 2 or even, depending on how big you are, maybe even 3 scoops in a day. That's about what I do, a scoop and a half twice, so 3 scoops. I start my day with a huge chunk of my daily protein knocked right off. So it's very easy for me to be consistent. And then outside of hitting your protein, we want to have good training sessions. Caffeine helps that. Creatine helps that. Beta-alanine has been shown to help that. Citrulline malate's been shown to help that. Well, what do you know? All in studied doses in PR Breaker Materia. If If you want to try it, use the discount code HUNT10 to save yourself some money and help support the show, prbreaker.com. Other than that, I do want to mention I have a unique opportunity for anybody who wants to compete in powerlifting. I only offer this a couple times a year, and it's for coaching, but it's a unique opportunity. So if you are a powerlifter, or you don't even have to be a competitive powerlifter, but if you are a powerlifter, you want to get stronger, your main goal is to gain strength, send me an email, kylehuntfitness@gmail.com, a unique opportunity for you if you want to take your training to the next level and you want to get strong. It's for coaching. It's a unique opportunity. Like I said, I don't offer this very often, but about twice a year, I like to do something a little unique for my powerlifting family out there. If you want coaching and you want to get strong and that's your main goal, this is the time. Like if you've been on the fence, like, oh man, I would really like Kyle to coach me, but I've been waiting. Like, don't wait. Send me an email right now, kylehuntfitness@gmail.com, and I'll let you know what the deal is and how to get you set up. Let's get the ball rolling. Now's the time. All right, let's get to the book. Sly Moves. How did my man, Sly Stallone, get in shape, get shredded? Man, and his best physique, in my opinion, was, it's a toss-up. Well, actually, there's really, when it comes to his best physique, there's three roles that it is in the conversation. You could say Rambo 3, okay, Rambo 3, or Rocky 3 or Rocky 4. Now, fun fact, and we'll go over this, and this is something that not many people know. In Rocky 3, okay, Sly got shredded. If you don't remember the movie, if you don't remember the script, he fought Clubber Lang in the beginning, gets knocked out. And then his old foe, Apollo Creed, comes in and, trains him, takes him out to L.A. He has to get that Eye of the Tiger, Eye of the Tiger, the music song, the song out there. So he goes out to L.A., gets the Eye of the Tiger back, and Apollo wants to make him lighter. He wants to get him quicker on his feet, faster, et cetera, et cetera. So what he does is Sly gets shredded for that role. Now, he's playing a heavyweight boxer. And in the movie, they say he weighs, I think, 202, which wouldn't even be heavyweight. That'd be like light heavyweight or cruiserweight. But, it's movies, they say it's, heavyweight. But in reality, Sly weighed 160 pounds. No shit. Sly weighed 160 pounds when he played Rocky 3. He was peeled, shredded, weighed 160 pounds. Now, with angles and lighting and shit, they can make it seem like he was 200, and he did look big, but he was, 160 pounds. And so, how does this apply to you? And there's actually a really good application to this. Something I talk about with my clients a lot is it's hard to know what your body weight is going to be at the end of a cut. Like, if you really want to push a cut to get shredded, it's hard to know. Like, especially if you're doing like a bodybuilding contest prep or getting ready for a photo shoot or something like that, it's really hard to say what your end weight is going to be because, well, there's two reasons. One, it's hard to know exactly how much fat you have. Like, a lot of people, even people with an experienced eye, will just kind of underestimate how much fat they really have. So they'll be like, oh, I'm probably going to be leaner at, let's say, like 180 pounds. Let's say you weigh 200 pounds and you're in relatively good shape. You're like, oh man, I'll probably look really lean at 180. And then you hit 180 and yeah, you look leaner, but you don't have that physique that was in your head. You know what I mean? You're not shredded at 180. And in reality, you might have to get to like 160 to be really shredded. But in the beginning, when you weighed 200, you probably would never imagine that you had 40 pounds to lose. But if you want to get completely shredded, that's probably what it takes. Like natural bodybuilders up on stage, like you'd be surprised what they weigh. Like you'd really, really be surprised. Like some of the best natural pro bodybuilders are on stage in the 150s. It's crazy. Like, I think sometimes it gets, like body weight gets kind of blown up because we think of like the IFBB pros, the guys that are all juiced up and they're on stage at over 200 pounds. But there's very few naturals who can be shredded and weigh over 200 pounds. Like, it's just super rare. There's people that can do it. They have elite genetics, been training for a really long time. But for the most part, I mean, you'd have to be really big, really tall, have a very thick physique to be 200 pounds and shredded naturally. So, speaking of natural, unnatural, Sly was definitely not. Well, I don't want to say definitely. Most likely he was not natural during the Rocky and Rambo series. I mean, he was probably had a little bit of enhancement. But fun fact, yeah, he weighed 160 pounds in Rocky 3. But yeah, shredded in Rocky 3. He was a little bit bigger in Rocky 4. But then he looked ridiculous in Rambo 3 too. I'd probably see, I don't know. It's a toss-up. I think he says in the book that Rambo 3 is his best physique. I don't know. Let's get to the book. All right. Well, we're going to jump right in to part 1, which is titled Sly on Sly, The Making of a Contender. Growing up in Silver Spring, Maryland, I'd spend my Saturday afternoons at the Silver Theater, an old Arabian Nights-style movie place, mesmerized by the matinee idols like Commando, Cody, Masked Marvel, and Sinbad the Sailor. Like the comic book characters I love so much, these movie icons had powerful physiques that made them invincible, and as a 98-pound weakling, I couldn't get enough of their adventures. Still, none of them came close to making an impression like the mighty mortal they called Hercules. I was 12 when I first saw Steve Reeves in Hercules, and I probably watched the movie 15 or 16 times that summer. My mind exploded. I saw a perfect physical specimen that was both heroic and human, and it was the first time in my life I started thinking about what I wanted to look like physically, how I wanted to develop in terms of proportions. Now, what's interesting here is Sly's talking about having an idol, and honestly, shit, Sly was kind of that for me. When I think back of like what got me into bodybuilding, a lot of people who grew up in kind of my era or a little bit older than me, it was like, okay, Arnold or Sly, and although I think sometimes I say Arnold because pumping iron was like the real turning point when I saw pumping iron. It's like, holy shit, like bodybuilding is my thing. But when I grew up watching Rocky and Rambo way before I came across pumping iron. So the first time I actually saw like a physique that I was like, okay, maybe I want to be like that someday was for sure Rocky. Like for sure Rocky. So it's just interesting he's talking about seeing Steve Reeves, old-time bodybuilder Steve Reeves, and that kind of being like, okay, well, shit, maybe that's what I want to be. I think kids today, I don't know, what would be the physique today? It's probably the only person that comes to mind will be like The Rock in Hollywood. But, I don't even think kids today growing up would even look to the movies. Like, they wouldn't even look to the movies. You know what they're looking at? They're looking at the Instagram stars, the Insta-famous fitness, people. Shit, someone like Christian Guzman's, Steve Cook. People like that have millions of followers on Instagram, like YouTube, etc. They're probably watching those guys and saying, oh, that's who I want to be. It's interesting how time changes and society changes, and it's crazy the impact that you can have. You don't even have to be a movie star today to have a huge impact on kids and I know it's just funny when you think back of all the little things that happened in your life and how they led to where you are. I'm 27 years old. All the little things that led to me being who I am. And I honestly say, like, yeah, seeing Rocky and Rambo was probably the first little step, the first inkling of training and a physique that, wasn't just a normal, like a physique that stood out. Interesting. All right, back to the book. My own life wasn't quite so heroic in those days. I was born in a clinic on 10th Avenue and 49th Street in Hell's Kitchen neighborhood, New York City, in the boiling summer of 1946. As I got older, people teased me all the time, and I became a chronic misbehavior. I wasn't a big kid or especially handsome, and with my speech problems and a name like Sylvester, life was becoming a cruel joke with no punchline in sight. I transferred from school to school because of behavioral problems. One teacher actually introduced me by saying, "Class, we have a new student today. His name is Sylvester," as in the cartoon. So for the rest of the year, I got, "Hey, Tweety Bird," or "What up, Pootie Tap?" Nice, huh? A real confidence booster. Back home, my father taught me how to be physically strong. Just watching him was a lesson in the power of kinetic energy. He didn't lift weights, but he'd constantly be moving rocks, cutting down trees, and pushing heavy machines around. There was nothing elegant about it, but the man was definitely in great shape, country strong, as they'd call it. My mother was also very physical, but she was a little bit more scientific about it. Her father was a district court judge who'd once roomed with Charles Atlas, the most famous bodybuilder ever. Mom started exercising with her father when she was very young, and she grew up hitting a punching bag, tossing around a medicine ball, etc. My mother is a chance taker, and one of the most unusual things she's ever done in her life was to open a women's gym in Washington, D.C. in 1954, when hardly anybody went to gyms, especially not women. That's wild to think about. So Sly's mom in 1954 opened a women's-only gym. There's a picture. It looks, I assume it's his mom. She has like a 1-inch barbell, like old style. She's holding up. Looks like there's some benches, some dumbbells, some pictures on the wall. It's pretty unique, man. 1954. I wonder what a women's gym in 1954 would be. I mean, I'm looking at the picture, but shit, that's pretty wild. So he obviously had that going for him. I mean, his mom owned a gym. So, I mean, it's definitely had it in the family. Back to the book. When I was in 6th grade, I was so obsessed with the idea that I could become Superboy. Superboy. I actually tried to make it happen. I went out and bought some red dye and a wax crayon and painted a big S on a shirt. I found a barber's cape, dyed it red, and then slipped into a bathing suit. For days, I'd literally wear this crazy get-up under my clothes. It was like I was telling myself that if I wished hard enough, the transformation would begin. Unfortunately, I decided to share this top secret information with my friend Jimmy. He promised and crossed his heart he'd never reveal this extraordinary information. Of course, he told the teacher. She brought me in front of the class. "Children, we have a special guest today, Superboy." She made me take my clothes off. Man, they're just telling this story is interesting. Can you imagine getting in front of a class and the teacher being like, "Take your clothes off"? Shit, that was different times. Continued. As I stood there in my baggy Speedo, everybody could see what a knock-kneed superhero pretender really looked like. After the laughter died down, I took my breadstick arms and pipe cleaner legs and blew out of there. But it didn't matter. I knew I'd found my superhero I could emulate in Hercules. It helped that Reeves was just as impressive off the screen as he was in the movie. The son of a farmer, he began bodybuilding as a teenager and soon developed one of the most remarkable physiques around. After returning home from World War II, he racked up titles as Mr. America, Mr. World, and Mr. Universe before Hollywood made him the biggest action star of today. So really, Steve Reeves was kind of the original Arnold. I mean, the bodybuilder who went to Hollywood. I kind of think Reg Park did the same thing. I know Reg Park was kind of Arnold's idol early on. Very interesting. Continued. Later in my life, Reeves and I became friends. What I admired most about him was how modest he was. He was never a poser or show-off. He wasn't one of those guys who announced to the world how fit he was. Steve wore oversized sweatsuits. Best body in the world, and he covered it up. Reeves was the real deal, and his influence on my life was truly profound. Here at last was a way out of my awkward youth. If I wasn't happy with myself as I was, maybe, just maybe, I could sculpt myself into the person I wanted to be. That's really what I wanted to talk about here. That's why I'm reading this passage. It's kind of setting the stage for Sly in his early years. What kind of led him to Hollywood? What led him to be who he was? After one of those Saturday matinees, I decided to start building myself up. So I went to the town junkyard and started lifting whatever I could find. A brake drum, half a fender, a steering column. I started tying rocks together with ropes. I'd do curls with cinder blocks strapped to a broomed handle. I never did any of that. Continued. My friends probably looked at me back then and thought, oh, this too shall pass. Soon enough, I found this dungeon-like weightlifting place called Iron City. We're talking old school. The town tough guys would all work out there and smoke cigarettes at the same time. It was all iron bars, not a weight machine in sight. It was a hellhole to the passerby, but to me, it was a godsend. What I began realizing was that the body is nothing but an honest machine that will never cheat you. It gives back exactly what you give it, good or bad, which is really true. I mean, the body, the body just responds to the stimulus that we give it, training-wise, nutrition-wise, recovery-wise, and it responds really well, Not quite as good as a machine, not quite as predictable as a machine or a computer is, but the body responds very, very predictably. Like we know there's patterns. I mean, you lift the weights, you do cardio, you diet, get into a caloric surplus, you gain weight, get into a deficit, you lose weight. I mean, the body responds pretty uniform. I mean, within reason. I mean, there's definitely people respond differently, but the body does respond to what we give it, good or bad. So once you recognize that, it's easy to see where you're at, good or bad. I mean, if you look at yourself in the mirror and you're not where you want to be, well, it's because the inputs you've been giving your body aren't leading to where you want to be. And I think most of everyone listening to this right now, we all work out, we all lift weights. If you're listening to the Absolute Strength podcast, you're in the gym, working out, dieting, etc. But it doesn't mean you're exactly where you want to be. I know, some of us, we get into the habit of just going through the motions, and we look up, it's been a few years, and we might not have made much progress. That's happened. Happened to me, it's happened to a lot of people. But you got to remember, go back to this moment right here. It's like, well, why is that? Well, the body's only responding to what we're giving it. If we're not forcing adaptation, well, the body's not going to adapt. Continued. 1,000,000 to 1 shot. That's what this section's titled. Being an actor in my early days in New York was slow going. So I spent most of my days doing odd jobs to pay the rent. Cleaning lion cages at the zoo, slicing fish heads, whatever it took to get by. I auditioned for nearly every single casting agent in town, but usually got rejected. The roles I did land were mainly the blink and miss type. I was the guy in Bananas beating up Woody Allen on the subway, and the mugger who got mugged by Jack Lemmon in The Prisoner of 2nd Avenue. I'd always known that physical appearance is very important to getting started in the movie business. And I also thought I could come up with different looks for different roles by experimenting with dieting and exercise. That really came to play in The Lords of Flatbush. Never heard of that movie. In the early 70s, I needed to morph into a hulking Brooklyn thug. So in the weeks before shooting, I went from 160 pounds to 200 pounds. It was probably the easiest weight training regimen I was ever on for a movie. Every day I'd gorge on whatever was cheap and fattening. I didn't know any better. By the time I sat down to write the script for Rocky, shortly after my 29th birthday, I had been exercising nearly half my life. But in many ways, I was just starting to learn about fitness. I highlighted this. So I read this book a long time ago, read it when I was younger, and I actually hadn't picked this book up in, I don't know, probably 10 years, I don't know. But when I was going over this book, preparing for this podcast, I highlighted this section because this really spoke to me. I'm going to read it again. By the time I sat down to write the script for Rocky, shortly after my 29th birthday, we live in a time where everybody's in a big rush. Everyone's in a big rush to success. And I think partly is just, the way society is now. Everything's faster. Everything's more accessible. We know what people are doing. We know what our friends are doing, social media and all that. Even me, I've been in the fitness game 10 years. I started when I was 17. I sometimes feel like I'm older. I feel like I should be farther along. I'm like, man, I've been doing this for 10 years. I've been hustling for 10 years, but I'm still only 27. I just think that people give up too early on fitness, on their business, on their goals, their dreams. They just give up too early. Success, a lot of times, is just a battle of attrition. Like, how far can you continue to push? How far can you keep moving in the same direction? Because I know it's cliched. Everybody's seen the memes that go around on social media, the infographics, of the iceberg. That's like, oh, everyone sees the tip of the iceberg, and that's success. But then what you don't see is underneath is like 10 times the amount of size, but that's just underneath the water. But I actually believe that. I think that it's kind of, you can make it the same analogy with weight loss. And I told this to my clients all the time. Like, there's periods of time in a diet where you might go a couple weeks where you don't see much progress. And people almost think that they're going backwards during this time. They're like, man, everything was going good. Now I've had like 3 weeks where my weight's about the same. And a lot of times, if they've truly been very consistent with things and all the numbers, like training numbers are going well, they're doing their cardio, doing their steps, etc., I'll say, you know what? I feel like you're near a breakthrough. And sometimes all we'll have to do is make a very small adjustment. An adjustment on paper, when you run the numbers, it would seem like irrelevant. Like dropping like 100 calories, 200 calories. God, it's not going to do anything. Drop 200 calories, and then we see weekly weight loss for the next 6 weeks in a row. Success is a lot like that. You might go 6 years, 10 years, being semi-successful, doing pretty well, but then you're just really setting yourself up for a big break. Sly was 29 years old when he wrote the script for Rocky. He was a nobody before that. In the grand scheme of things, he was a nobody. I just wanted to highlight that because that spoke to me. I mean, I'm turning 28 in October. I'm getting towards that time, 30 is a big year. I'm like, shit. I remember when I still think I'm like a kid. I remember when I was just getting into the business. I was like 5 years in, just out of college, 23 years old. I'm like, 22, 23. I'm like, man, I'm doing good. I'm ahead of the curve. But, you blink and now I'm 27 and I don't know. Somewhere along the line, I started to think that maybe I should be further ahead. And I have to remind myself, just like, hey, just keep moving forward. Just keep pushing forward. And, you never know when that big breakthrough is going to come. All right. Continued. Back to the book. Up to that point, my workouts had been erratic and unorthodox, partly because I was flat broke and couldn't afford to get to a proper gym. I remember I had one of those crude 60-pound turn-of-the-century dumbbells in my apartment. It was black and had York, Pennsylvania printed on the sides and had a huge grip like one of those strongman weights you'd see in the circus. That was my health club. Fun fact, I actually have one of those dumbbells. Well, mine's not 60 pounds. I think it's like 40 pounds, but it's an old-school York dumbbell. Like the handle is super thick. It's like a fat grip thickness in the dumbbell handle, and the ends of the dumbbell are like rounded off. It's pretty cool. My wife's stepdad found it. Like he works contracting, and like it was, I don't know, in like a job site, and he took it and gave it to me. But yeah, it's like I remember I weighed it because like, shit, I wonder how heavy this is. And I think it's supposed to be like a 40-pound dumbbell, but I think it's like 37 and a half or something, 38 pounds. I actually like it to do dumbbell snatches with. Like it's pretty cool. Like when I'm training at home, back when I used to have a home gym, I would use it for dumbbell snatches. It's only like one odd 37 and a half pound thick grip dumbbell, but yeah, it's just interesting. He talks about that because I have one just like it, and it says it's black and it has York, Pennsylvania printed on one of the sides. Continued. Proper nutrition was an absolute mystery to me back then. All I knew was that fighters were strong. So I took an old school approach and beefed up on fried chicken and potatoes, burgers and fries, spaghetti and baked ziti, whatever I thought would build muscle mass. If you recall, Rocky calls himself a ham and egger, but he just as easily could have been an ice cream and milk shaker, because that's all I was eating at the time, which made about as much sense scientifically as that cocktail of raw eggs I drank for breakfast in the movie. Actually, that scene was a tribute to those early days in New York. I couldn't afford to eat out, so I kept eggs on my windowsill and learned to eat them raw. that scene, man, more people have downed raw eggs because of that one Rocky scene in the original Rocky than, that one scene single-handedly caused people to eat raw eggs. No joke. Like, I remember when I first got into fitness, I was like, man, why is like eating raw eggs a thing? Like, it just didn't make any sense to me. I was like, why don't you just cook them? Like, what the hell? But a couple reasons. One, I think at the time people thought maybe like cooking the eggs denatured the protein and made it not as effective. And then another thing, people probably thought, well, if you have to cook it, you got to cook it in like butter and you're adding a bunch of fat to it. But I'm trying to think other things that maybe just time. Like people didn't have, this is in the 70s, like people didn't have hit point protein to buy. So you're like, well, shit, I just want to have a quick 30 grams of protein, can't have a scoop of protein powder, so just have 6 raw eggs, But it didn't make any sense. Back to the book. I was under the impression, and by the way, the book is about to get good. So if you're like, man, Kyle, this is just a lot of background information that seems kind of boring, it's just setting the stage. We're about to get really good here. Stay with me. I was under the impression I was in great shape until I met Carl Weathers, the actor who played Apollo Creed. My body conditioning was basically average, and in some areas I was weak and out of shape. Looking back at some of the pictures from around that time, it's a cold slap in the face. How did I ever think I could pull off playing a veteran heavyweight with that body? My body was light years behind. All I had was the desire and not much else. Sometimes it does help to be delusional. Anyway, I had originally wanted Ken Norton, a real heavyweight and former world champion, to play my opponent. But once Carl came in my office and threw a few jabs and hooks my way, I thought he might have a shot. When he took off his shirt, the deal was sealed. Man, Apollo Creed was shredded in Rocky 1. He was. He had a great physique. Apollo was the man. Carl Weathers, he was ahead of his time. Back to the book. Standing next to him, I instantly became Kid Cannoli. Carl was chiseled. It was partly due to good genetics, but he also knew what he was doing. And I learned so much from him about physiology, diet, exercising smarter, etc. In the beginning, he knocked me around like a rag doll. The outtake footage of us boxing together is totally hilarious. I've always said Rocky is a semi-autobiography. Having growing up in the streets, I knew a million down and outers. I knew what they ate, where they worked, how they thought. Most of all, I understood their broken dreams. I'm a guy who basically had to build himself from scratch. Fortunately, I'd always known how to work with what I had, and sometimes that's all it took to achieve success. A little discipline and a little luck. And you know what? If you can relate to that, you're in the majority. That's the story of the planet. That's the truth, you know? I think, shit, man. Doesn't matter. Yeah, we all are dealt a different hand of cards, but there's just something to be said. Like, if you look at a lot, I'm big on reading biographies and just studying success and looking at people who've been ultra successful. And yeah, sometimes when people achieve success, it's almost like it's easy for them to go back and be like, oh yeah, it was just hard work, you know? And, you know, sometimes that goes off. It's like, well, it's easy for you to say. I mean, you made millions of dollars, became a movie star, etc. But almost everybody, doesn't matter where they start, everyone has to work hard. And then it's cool when you find a story, someone like Sly, who really did come from nothing. I mean, it's pretty wild. His story is pretty wild. Continued. I thought about all the people who fail to live up to the potential because they're too scared or intimidated or beaten down. I was thinking of myself, really, and I wrote the very first rough draft of Rocky in a 3.5-day coffee-drenched frenzy. It was a story I needed to get out. I had $106 to my name. $106 to his name. It's crazy. And no prospects in sight. My car had died. I was taking a bus to work. I even had to sell my dog Butkus. I thought, I might be totally wrong, but I just have to go after this. I have to believe it can happen. It wasn't enough that the screenplay actually sold. I told the studio they could have it for free if I could play Rocky Balboa. They balked at first. The price went to nearly $360,000, which was about $359,000 more than I'd ever seen before. I couldn't sell it. I'd been broke for so long, I'd gotten used to it. They finally relented and gave a total unknown a shot. For the miracle, I'm forever indebted. So this is a cool part. So Sly actually wrote the script for Rocky, and, you know, he's been broke his entire life, didn't have any money, and was trying to sell the script, and people loved it. People loved the script. The studios loved it. They offered $360,000 to him to buy the script. But here's the thing: he wanted to play Rocky Balboa. That was like the tipping point right there. Can you imagine? I mean, shit, if he would have just sold it, his career would have been different. I mean, he may have just been a writer. I mean, he might have just continued being in small parts in movies. Maybe he wrote, if Rocky was a big success, maybe he would have wrote Rocky 2 and so on. But that decision, he believed in, he wanted to be Rocky. He wanted to be an actor. That was the key. I mean, that really was the turning point for him. Continued. Rocky was creating a buzz long before the general public ever saw it. The early private screenings around Hollywood were drawing cheers and a few standing ovations, much to my complete astonishment. Even more shockingly, people in the film industry began tracking me down instead of the other way around. I remember John Wayne introducing himself to me at one point. John Wayne! Talk about a humbling experience. Everything felt great until a serious case of panic set in. Shortly before Rocky opened in a few theaters, I attended one last private screening at the Directors of Guild of America. I still remember it vividly. I brought my mother and wore a new $40 suit from May Company. Earlier screenings had been super successful, but this was Hollywood, the real test. This audience was hardcore and sophisticated studio executives, screenwriters, and directors whose respect I so desperately wanted. But after the final credits, the theater went silent. You could hear crickets. My mother and I just sat there until everybody left. I took a deep breath and figured the wild ride was over. It was history. But then, as we walked down the stairs to the lobby, I saw people waiting. Nearly the entire crowd, 800 strong, had gathered at the bottom of the steps to give me a tremendous ovation. I knew in that moment my whole life had changed. The Rocky story is so impossible to believe. I still don't know how it happened. You go from a concept that never made any money, because nearly every boxing film had always faltered, to winning an Oscar. Winning an Oscar for Best Picture for one of the most inexpensive studio films ever made. And as the movie became a national and international hit, it felt like I was living an impossible dream. Man, what a ride. What a ride. So really that kind of culminates the introduction that I wanted to talk about, really just how Sly became Sly in Rocky was the big hit. He wrote it and and then started it, and then it became a super big hit. Man, crazy. Now we're going to get into some of the training. Continued, back to the book. But as the 70s drew to a close, I suddenly realized the greatest opportunity to physically alter a character was right under my nose. Why can't you follow a character as he grows, rather than push Rocky away? I could transform him mentally and physically. For Rocky 2, not only would I give audiences something slightly different, I would show that Rocky, like all of us, is a work in progress. I'd known since I was 12 years old that the way to change your life was to change your body. I love that quote. The way to change your life is to change your body. The best way to change your life, the easiest way, I don't know if I want to say easy, the simplest way to change your life is to change your body, change your health. I've seen it 100 times. I mean, that's the beauty of, online coaching, the business, the career that I've chose. It's highly competitive. It's stressful. I love it. But one thing you can't say is it is one of the most rewarding jobs and careers that you can do. I mean, I've seen so many people's lives change. I mean, it's just, it sounds so cliche, but when you've done it for 10 years and you've worked with hundreds and hundreds of clients and you've literally seen hundreds of people's lives change. And I'm not talking just like their physique changes. Yeah, that's part of it. You lose some fat, build some muscle, gain some strength. But what that does to the rest of your life, I've seen it firsthand. A lot of my clients stick with me for a long time. I become friends with most of my clients. I was on a coaching call today with one of my clients, Zach, and, we talk about, when we jump on a 30-minute coaching call, we might talk 10 minutes at most, about the training and nutrition, and it's 20 minutes just about life, what's going on, because there's so much more that goes into this than just the X's and O's, and just seeing how people evolve and as they become more confident in not only their abilities in the gym, but then that carries over to their life. And, it's crazy. I love that quote, though. The best way to change your life is to change your body. Continued. I thought, why should it be any different now? Changing my body had become my secret turnaround move. And then he talks about a couple movies that he did that for. There's a movie, Fist, that followed Rocky, where he added 35 pounds to play a union boss on the rise. And then another movie, he lost a bunch of weight. So he basically was, yo-yoing up and down his body weight based on the roles. And then for Rocky 2, continued, I knew I needed guidance this time. So I summoned the body of all bodies. My hero, Steve Reeves, had retired from bodybuilding by then because of a shoulder injury. So I called on the remarkable Franco Columbu. Franco, Arnold's buddy. Man, I always looked up to, pretty much every short guy looks up to Franco Columbu because he was like 5'5", and just competed with Arnold in the 70s. He actually became Mr. Olympia, I think twice. I think he was Mr. Olympia in 76, which was Arnold's last year was 75. Well, before Arnold retired, Arnold won the Olympia in 75, retired for 5 years, came back in 1980, and won it again when Arnold won his 7th Mr. Olympia. That was a controversial one because he didn't quite look as good, but they still gave it to him. And I think Franco won it in 76, so the year after Arnold, and then again in 81, the year after Arnold. But so Franco Columbu, former bodybuilder, Sly went and trained with him. Back to the book. Franco was born on the Mediterranean island of Sardinia during World War II, and during the 1960s he started racking up bodybuilding titles and eventually won Mr. Europe, Mr. World, Mr. Olympia, and Mr. Universe. The fitness magazine called Franco the Sardinian Strongman. Yeah, Franco was strong as shit too, man. That's why I always looked up to him. He was really, really strong. He was under 200 pounds. I know he could deadlift like 700. Again, this is like in the 70s. He did. I think he actually did the world's strongest man. We worked out in Franco's single-car garage in Santa Monica. It was the oddest place, mainly because he had this pet, a hostile, one-winged owl. As we'd work out, the bird would glare at me, intermittently flapping that lonely wing of his as if to say, get out. Franco was from the old school of ground and pound workouts, down and dirty, nothing glamorous. But I followed his every move, 100%, and that included a diet of yogurt, and for dessert, a little more yogurt. The problem was, the more yogurt I ate, the slower and bulkier I got. Just the opposite of my hope for more defined character. Maybe my bones were getting stronger, but I was so bloated I'd feel like I'd been going the same route as the Hindenburg. If you lit a match, I would have gone up in a fireball. Man, I can't imagine just only eating yogurt all day. It probably wasn't even Greek yogurt either, so it probably wasn't even from a macro standpoint. Not sure what they were doing. Continued. Franco was definitely a tough guy. A year or so earlier, he'd shattered his leg racing with a 600-pound refrigerator full of sand on his back during the World's Strongest Man competition. Yes, it's true. Miraculously, he worked his way back and would win more bodybuilding titles. Clearly, the man knew what he was doing. But as it turned out, my body was just completely different. Yogurt slowly brought the curtain down on our working relationship. At the end of one of our intensely competitive lifting sessions, Franco challenged me to a bench pressing contest. Like an idiot, I accepted. Remember, this is the man who runs with a bone-crushing 600-pound sand-filled refrigerator tied to his back for amusement. But since we were just a month away from shooting the movie, I thought, what the hell? 250, 275, 300, 315, 335. That's when your male ego should be removed from your head and left in a drawer at home. Franco Columbu, to this day, is considered pound for pound maybe one of the strongest bodybuilders of all time. Did I ask to be excused? Did I say I'm late for a doctor's appointment? No, I tried to beat him, so I pushed with all I had. Bang! My pectoral major exploded. The muscle anchored to the ribs that hold the arm in place suffered a massive tear during the lift. Tumbling off the bench, I collapsed onto my right shoulder and stared in disbelief as the rippled veins in my right arm turned my arm nearly black and double its size. I'm rolling around on the floor, cursing my luck, trying not to black out. Maybe I was hallucinating, but I swear I could see the single-winged owl smiling and trying desperately to clap. 160 stitches and an attachment cable through my shoulder bone put me in a dry dock for 2 months. That's when I was informed that a yogurt diet alone won't provide enough fiber to build muscle, especially, well, you don't really need fiber to build muscle, but besides the point, especially for the kind of muscle I was using that day. It all proved to be a valuable lesson, one I can hopefully pass on to my beautiful children. Defective owls, mega amounts of yogurt, and challenging a superhuman Sardinian is a definite formula for disaster. The injury actually turned out to be a very good dramatic device. The insurance company wanted to shut down production, but I convinced them it didn't matter and I could use my right arm. I rewrote the end of the script so that Rocky's manager, Mickey, in a last-minute strategic move, advises Rocky to switch to southpaw, left-handed, as a way to blindside Apollo and win the fight. The plan worked. We filmed on schedule, and Rocky II was #1 in the world that year. Maybe I should have gotten badly damaged for every film. For good luck, I mean. So if you remember the script how the movie, Rocky II played out is, well, Rocky was known as he was a southpaw in Rocky I. But then he was going to switch to conventional, standard or orthodox stance, right-handed stance to kind of confuse Apollo. But then at the end, he switches back to southpaw. Well, it was because he tore his pec in a bench press competition with Franco freaking Columbu. Franco, yeah, man. Although I feel like he kind of, I don't know, maybe downplayed how much he trained with Franco, but there's a lot of pictures of Sly and Franco training together. So I don't know, maybe like after they made up or something, but there was a lot of pictures of them training together if you look online. The road to Rambo. Most actors would be pleased to be associated with one incredible character, like Rocky. I've had the great fortune of being associated with two. John Rambo was an ex-Green Beret haunted by the ghost of Vietnam, an icon in the 1980s. At least that's what Time magazine called him, and playing him got me in the best shape of my life. Like Rocky, Rambo was an intensely physical role that demanded months of training each time I played him. I wanted the character's look to reflect his hardcore personality, and from the beginning that meant finding new ways to strengthen and build my body. Fortunately, when I made First Blood, the first of the 3 Rambo movies, I was already in good shape, having just completed Rocky III. For that film, I had really gone all out. My intention was to show how far Rocky had come since his days of struggle and strife. With success in the ring, he had practically become a one-man industry, with magazine covers and endorsement deals to prove it, and I wanted his body to reflect his superhuman status and perhaps growing egotism. The way I trained for Rocky III was a bit of an overkill. I would run 3 miles in the morning, then go straight into 15 rounds of sparring, followed by 2 hours in the weight room, pushing tons of iron. Then I'd usually do 500 sit-ups before jumping rope for 10 rounds. I'd eat, nap, and start again. In the afternoon, I'd take another run, do some more heavy lifting, and then finish up with a long swim. It was difficult to turn off the desire to train. I'd think about it obsessively. Sometimes I would even leave a movie or dinner party at night and drive home to work out no matter what the time, 1 or 2 in the morning. It didn't matter. This is not how to train, because when it becomes an obsession, it does much more harm than good. So I include this story only as a cautionary tale. Man, he was Shred City in Rocky III. He was probably on all kinds of steroids at the time too, and cutting drugs. But damn, that's wild. So he would, just try to kind of wrap my head around this. He would run 3 miles in the morning. All right, so just think like, okay, so first thing in the morning, run 3 miles. And then he'd go into 15 rounds of sparring. All right, I love Sly, but I think like part of him thought he was actually getting ready for a damn fight. He thought he was in like a fight camp or something. So he would run 3 miles in the morning, then go straight into 15 rounds of sparring. Why the hell do you need to do sparring? Was he actually like getting hit? I wouldn't doubt it with Sly. Followed by 2 hours in the weight room, then 500 sit-ups before jumping rope for 10 rounds, about 30 minutes. Then he'd eat, nap, and start again. Then in the afternoons, he'd do another run, more lifting, and then finish up with a swim. So he would pretty much be training all day. It's like he's getting ready for the CrossFit Games. But damn, he did get shredded. Back to the book. I was just as gung-ho about my diet then too. Most days, I'd eat little more than tuna straight out of the can for protein and a slice of burnt toast, water, and gallons of coffee. My friend John Travolta had graciously given me an espresso machine, and I'd sometimes have more than 30 tiny cups of coffee a day to help speed my metabolism. It was only later I realized that I needed all that caffeine because I wasn't getting enough energy from food. All that effort certainly appeared to be working. I went from having 14% body fat to around 2.8%. All right, well, Sly was definitely Shred City, but I don't think he was 2.8%. Body fat percentage is one of those things. It's funny. It doesn't really matter. Like, it doesn't really matter what the number is. I mean, even the most accurate methods we have, so like DEXA scans or bod pods or air displacement, all the stuff, even them, they're not all that accurate. I mean, really the only way to accurately, like really get an accurate idea of what your body fat is dissection. Like literally you're dead and cutting up your body. I mean, it's just, we don't really have a method of accurately determining body fat. The calipers are off. Bioelectrical impedance are like the ones where you just you stand on a scale and like hold the handles. Like they're the highest range of fluctuation due to like hydration and stuff. Like depending on how hydrated you are, it can like fluctuate by a couple percentages. So yeah, it's not a big deal. I mean, one of the things I like to talk about with my clients is like, hey, look, I don't really care about the number, but if you have a method of tracking body fat percentage and just you stay consistent with it, it's a good way to track progress if you don't get too caught up in the number. Honestly, the same with the scale. I mean, the scale is a great way to track progress, but you don't want to get too caught up on the number in terms of, you know, you're in a fat loss phase. Obviously, you got to lose weight. You got to lose some weight to lose fat, but you don't want to become obsessed with the number, you know. It just doesn't lead to good things. But with that being said, we do want to see change. Same thing with body fat. But it's always wild. Sometimes you'll see like athletes. I remember like Le'Veon Bell, a couple years ago when he was still with the Steelers. He posted something during like training camp on his Instagram. He's like, yeah, I just had my body fat tested. He's like, I'm like 2%. And I mean, he was lean, but he had like a decent six pack. Like he wasn't contest prep shredded or anything. He was probably like 8% body fat, but he was like, yeah, I got it tested 2%. So, I mean, yeah, Sly was shredded in Rocky III, but he probably wasn't 2.8%. He goes on to say, in those days, Mr. Olympia would have measured around 4%. Keep in mind, like 3 to 4% is what you need to stay alive. So if you get to like 2.8%, you're probably going to die. And then he said the average guy is 18 to 20%. Yeah, it's probably true. So here's what I actually touched on in the introduction. He goes on to say, so in Rocky 3, he weighed in at 161 pounds. I was leaner than ever, but certainly not healthier. Yeah, so he only weighed 161 pounds in Rocky 3, playing a heavyweight boxer. Crazy. Moving on. I was under a fair amount of stress during that time because I was also directing Rocky 3, and I had looked forward to letting up a bit for the movie when the movie finished. Since I was merely going to just co-write and star in First Blood, I thought, hey, this should feel like a vacation. Yeah, that's the other thing. Rocky, or Sly, he directed, I think, 4 out of the 6 Rocky films. The script for First Blood had been floating around Hollywood for a long time, and many prominent actors and directors, including Clint Eastwood, Steve McQueen, Nick Nolte, Michael Douglas, Al Pacino, and Robert De Niro had passed on it for one reason or another. But I connected with the Rambo story. Plus, they most likely ran out of actors, so their misfortune was my good luck. I got to play the character and touched a chord with audiences around the world and cross-cultural lines. I believe what made Rambo a success, though, was the character spoke with his body. That's one thing about especially the original Rambo. There's really not a lot of talking, not a lot of dialogue. The original cut of First Blood ran almost 3 hours, and it was full of orientations about the plight of America's neglected soldiers. It was a completely different film. Rambo even dies in the original version. But by editing the movie down to 97 minutes and losing almost all of the dialogue, we created a man who was completely emotional and physical. It turned out that the words were pointless with Rambo. He expressed himself clearly with cat-like moves and haunted eyes that said everything about the estrangement and abandonment he felt. Making Rambo a purely physical creature had major implications for me, especially once the studio started pushing for a sequel. In the first movie, John Rambo looked fit, but he certainly wasn't a bodybuilder type. There was none of that narcissism. He was a regular athletic guy whose power was just very much under control, even subdued. He was practically zen. Some people talk about the violence in the movie, but Rambo here isn't so much a killing machine as someone who fought back only in self-defense. The only regret I have about playing Rambo was my borderline insane choice to play the character in a damp, moth-eaten tank top during the coldest Canadian winter in 100 years. As you might have guessed, making First Blood wasn't a vacation at all. My workouts were less intense than on Rocky 3, but the actual filming was tougher. I opted to do many of my own stunts, so I was constantly leaping from edges and jumping over roots and rocks. Shooting the scene in which Rambo jumps from a cliff and falls through a tree, I landed the wrong way and cracked 2 ribs, leaving me in a kind of agony I hadn't experienced since I was forced to eat raw oysters as a 6-year-old. As with Rocky, I saw each Rambo sequel as an opportunity to change physically. I couldn't just come back every time looking like the same guy. I wanted the challenge, because a real challenge that intimidates you is the only thing that will bring out your best. And that's true. Man, that's true too. Like, I like to think about that with myself sometimes. Like, I don't know, I just think success, you just got to get out of your comfort zone. You know, I think your goals, your ambitions should scare you a little bit. You know, you should get that like tingly feeling. I live for that. I love that feeling, that little tingly like nervousness. You know, before you're getting ready to do something aggressive. You know, whether it's I used to always feel that before a football game or before a wrestling tournament, those couple minutes while you're on deck getting ready to walk out on the mat. I still feel the same thing for powerlifting meets too. I still feel that before heavy sets in the gym sometimes. Like, I get myself really focused on whatever the set is, whatever I want to accomplish. And if I know it's a little bit beyond what's going to be comfortable, I get a little nervous because I want to perform. I live for that. I just think your goals should scare you a little bit. Getting in shape for Rambo First Blood 2 meant pushing to new limits. We needed a ferocious look to match the plot that was equally pumped up. In the story, Rambo had been in a military prison camp breaking rocks, so his arms had to be powerful and hard. Months before production began, I got into an extremely intense training regimen. As the shoot got closer, I put myself on a repetitive high-protein diet that consisted mainly of chicken, greens, and occasionally beets. On weekends, I'd lighten up a bit and maybe even have some ice cream. But come Monday, it was back to the bare minimum. Exercise was far too intense. On a 6-day a week program, sometimes 2 times a day. But thankfully, we've learned with workout programs that more is not necessarily better. And in most cases, too much pumping and grunting can destroy positive results by leaving your body in a constant state of exhaustion. Perhaps it was overly ambitious, but I wanted to take John Rambo, a character that in the original movie had been in good shape, and turn him into a physical specimen even bodybuilders would appreciate. For me, it wasn't just about preparing for a role. This had become a personal contest of the highest order. How far could I push myself? I wondered. The workout routines were usually what we would call supersets and split sets, with 15 to 20 sets of exercises targeting every part of the body. If you're not into weight training, this was hardcore. I literally lived in the gym. Then I would come home at night, and before bed I'd do 200 sit-ups, 250 push-ups, and 100 chin-ups. Again, this was far more work than necessary to have gotten the desired results. So yeah, he did a lot of work, did a lot of volume. One thing you do see a lot of people do, and I probably got this from Sly, but I used to do this in high school, is just the old body weight shit at nighttime. I used to always do sit-ups, push-ups, and pull-ups right before bed, where I would do, I don't know, probably a couple hundred sit-ups, couple hundred push-ups, and then, 50 to 100 chin-ups. That's what I used to do in high school I don't want to say every night, but probably like 3 to 4 nights a week. That's what I would do. I had a doorway pull-up bar at the time, and I would just do sit-ups and push-ups I was religious about it too. Like I remember I remember being, I used to wake up like at 5 o'clock in the morning when I was in high school to go to the gym before school too. So I would go to bed really early, and I remember it would be the summertime, and we'd be, I don't know, I'd even have like friends over or something, and it would get to be like 7:30, 8 o'clock, and I'd just be like, hey, like I have to go do my push-ups, sit-ups, and pull-ups, and then go to bed. And they'd be like, oh, I'm like, yeah, so I guess it's time, you should probably go home, and I gotta do my push-ups and get to bed. I gotta wake up at 5 in the morning. I must have been crazy. Probably was just trying to be like Sly. Back to the book. Those big Rambo 2 brushstrokes signaled the beginning of a new kind of uber action hero. Yes, we'd had physically strong movie heroes before, John Wayne, Steve McQueen, Kirk Douglas, but now people were viewing Rambo with his bandana, gun, knife as a kind of personification of an American war machine. I wasn't sure how I felt about that, but that didn't matter. The character was taking on a life of his own. It was an interesting time for me personally, especially once Ronald Reagan announced he was a Rambo fan. President Reagan had a habit of telling jokes to technicians over his open microphone as he prepared to address the nation. In June 1985, before a live speech from the Oval Office following the release of 39 American hostages in Lebanon, he said, "After seeing Rambo last night, I know what to do next time this happens." The comment leaked out in the summer's end, and the president referenced the movie again. Rambo was suddenly a school of thought. He'd become an ism. Crazy. All right, so we're getting a little touch on how Sly trained for the Rocky movies and Rambo. Moving on to actually Rambo 3, which I think is probably, arguably his best physique. Sand and Sweat. Let's dig into this. At 1,320 feet below sea level, the Dead Sea on the border between Israel and Jordan is the lowest point on Earth. The sun scorches the surrounding desert landscape without a hint of rain for more than 330 days a year. At midday, temperatures can soar to 130 degrees. This extreme environment proved to be a fitting backdrop for Rambo 3, the most intense movie-making experience of my life. Rambo had become such a phenomenon by 1988 that I had to work hard to keep up with him. The movie itself was the most ambitious Rambo of them all. Now our hero was going into Afghanistan to confront the menacing Russians, and I felt I needed a physique that matched that gargantuan scale. We hadn't seen the Wandering Warrior in 4 years, so when he was revealed for the first time, he appears to have grown in strength, which was not so much an opportunity to show off, but rather a not-so-subtle message that you're never too old to keep improving. Rambo 3 conveniently coincided with the end of Rocky 4, in which I'd pumped myself up to box with Dolph Lundgren, who played Rocky's superhuman Russian opponent. But I know I'd have to be in better shape for this one. Speaking of which, Rocky 4, like the training montage in Rocky 4, where he's in Russia, well, I can't remember where they filmed that, but it wasn't Russia, but maybe it was. I don't know. Well, anyway, when he was in Russia, training out in the wilderness, sawing logs, running through the snow, and then that was coincided with Drago, Dolph Lundgren's character, training in a super high-tech, fancy Russian sports science facility. They're injecting steroids into his shoulder. Man, that scene, that training montage is, out of all the Rocky movies, I have to say probably Rocky IV is the one from the training perspective that probably hit me the hardest when I was a kid. All right, moving on. The challenge wasn't just about getting into great shape. By that point, I knew how to do that. The trick was maintaining the look. In most movies, you have to maintain the character's exact weight and appearance for months at a time. I decided to add 15 pounds of muscle from where I'd been in Rambo 2, and went from 163 pounds to around 178 to 180. Yeah, so you remember Rambo 2 coincided with Rocky 3, and in Rocky 3 he was shredded to the bone, really lean. So Rambo 2 is only 163 pounds, and Rambo 3 got a little bit bigger, 178 and 180. That's why I like Rambo 3's look, because he's still really lean, but yeah, he's like 15, 20 pounds heavier. Back to the book. Now I needed to stay that way, so I gained 15, 20 pounds and needed to maintain that for months. And those desert conditions certainly didn't make it easy. Memos were posted around the set reminding everyone to drink 20 to 30 cups of water a day and to stay out of the midday sun. To beat the heat, I'd wake up at 5:30 in the morning, and sometimes it would already be 95 degrees. Soon enough, a camel with a large family of flies perched on its lower lip would pick me up to take me to my quote-unquote gym, which was just a few dumbbells in the sand. Thinking back on it, I was slightly insane for what I put myself through. Most mornings, I do 40 sets of exercises and 10 to 15 repetitions of each one. Everyone has a body part that's on average stronger than the rest. Mine is my back. I would do pull-downs with 275 pounds of weight at a time, and I only weighed 180 pounds. They literally had to strap me to the bench so I wouldn't snap in two. But I saved the real work from the abdominals. I convinced myself that it's one thing to get big arms or a big chest, but the midsection tells the real story. At the time, I believed it, but I've come to learn that you can be in fantastic health and be incredibly fit and not have anything close to a six-pack, not even a one-pack, so don't worry about it. I will say this. Rambo's back was impressive, especially in Rambo 3 when you see him for like the first time and he's tying, it's like a back shot, and he has his arms up in like a double bicep pose almost, but he's just tightening up his headband. That's an iconic shot. And yeah, I mean, you can be in great shape and not have a six-pack. I mean, that's for sure. But it's one of those things, and this is kind of a topic that we could go down someday. Can you be healthy and overweight? It's a question that gets brought up a lot. Can you be healthy and overweight? You can. However, and this has been shown in research, for the most part, most of the health markers that get improved when you go on a diet are simply caused from losing weight. So if you're overweight and you go on a diet, whether it's low carb, low fat, vegan, paleo, carnivore, if it fits your macros, whatever diet that causes you to lose weight, so you're on a caloric deficit, so any type of caloric deficit type of diet, the real benefit just comes in the weight loss. I think going from overweight to a normal weight, whatever that means, is probably going to benefit people. And essentially what I'm saying is just losing a little bit of body fat, almost anybody will benefit to that. Now, with anything, you can take it to the extreme. Being absolutely shredded. What's funny is I think sometimes people see the bodybuilders who are completely peeled right down to the bone, or the people on Instagram that are just maintain a super lean physique all the time, and they see them as all the epitome of health. I mean, they're the fitness influencers. Like they have to be super healthy, but in fact, they're the ones that are probably they're not any really healthier than, maybe they're a little bit healthier than the people who are overweight, but not that much. You know, normally their metabolisms are destroyed. They're battling hunger. They're fatigued all the time. They're normally on drugs. I mean, really, the way to be the healthiest is just to kind of have a balance of everything. But again, I mean, most of you guys listening to this, I mean, we don't really believe in balance. I mean, we're going to push things to the extreme. So, you know, we probably push too hard. So, but a lot of it's not even about health and longevity for us. I mean, we're focused on performance for this time period, and then maybe when we get a little bit older, we can shift our focus over to health and longevity. But I just wanted to comment because it's something that gets brought up a lot, and you can be healthy and you can be in You can even be in good shape, quote unquote shape, good cardiovascular shape, and not necessarily look it. You see that with athletes sometimes. See athletes, and for example, the guy who just knocked out Anthony Joshua. I'm not even saying he's in great cardiovascular shape, but you look at him, and Anthony Joshua looks like a Greek god. He's just shredded and jacked, and he gets knocked out. You see that a lot. I mean, even like Daniel Cormier in UFC, he doesn't have a great physique. Actually, a lot of the guys don't look like bodybuilders, and most athletes don't look like bodybuilders. I remember when I first got into bodybuilding and was reading the bodybuilding magazines, I was really surprised. I'm talking like when I was like 15 years old, 16 years old. I was like, damn, everyone thinks like NFL players are jacked, but they're nothing compared to bodybuilders. I'm surprised the NFL players aren't more jacked. I'm surprised these bodybuilders aren't better at football than these NFL guys. Like they don't even have that much muscle compared to Mr. Olympia. And then it kind of hit me. I'm like, oh, yeah, well, being super jacked like a bodybuilder, isn't that applicable to playing athletics? I mean, there's a lot of sports where, having more muscle mass, having more lean mass is good. Being lean is good in general for power and explosion and speed. But you don't necessarily have to look like a bodybuilder to be healthy and in good shape. I think that's kind of the point I was trying to say. Back to the book. All right. So Sly talked about all those things about how you don't need a six-pack to be healthy, but he said you couldn't have convinced him back then. He was still lost in the bodybuilding dark ages. I turned to the archaic training methods like hanging from an old-fashioned wall rack while kicking my legs above my head, or I'd suspend myself upside down with weights in my hands and jackknife my body straight back up. Again, this is far too extreme, and at the time I didn't know any better. Overtraining wasted thousands of hours of my life. I do want to touch on this for a second, because Sly keeps bringing up that, like, he didn't know any better and he did too much. Yeah, I mean, the training he's outlining here was really just, it was excessive. It was definitely excessive. But with that being said, it was effective for him. I mean, he did a lot of volume. I mean, he'd been training for a long time, so he probably slowly built the volume up over time. Could he have got similar or even better results doing less? Probably. Probably he could have got better results if he did a little bit less and maybe had a little bit more of a scientific approach to it. But, and I've said before, sometimes we can become too smart for our own good. I would rather have someone go balls to the wall and go too hard than someone not go hard enough. Another thing you got to understand is he was on drugs. I'm pretty sure he was on steroids at the time. So his ability to recover from training was higher. So he could handle a little bit more. That's just something to be said. I think it's, he's trying to come across as like, hey, this is what I did, but that's not what you need to do. And which is 100% correct. Like if, you don't need to do that crazy amount of stuff, and he didn't need to, but it did work. Like that's one thing I want to say. And sometimes people do get results in spite of what they do, not because of what they do, but it did work. And, he said he wasted a lot of time. Well, I say, yeah, shit. I mean, he was successful doing it, so it probably wasn't a waste in my opinion. Back to the book. From a production standpoint, Rambo 3 was a massive undertaking. And to keep my focus, I made sure I had all the right tools at the ready. I had an 18-piece gym set up at our Dead Sea accommodations. And to keep my diet consistent, I ate chicken and a green vegetable 7 days a week, twice a day. Only 2 meals a day. I'm proud to say that by the end of the shoot, I nearly had grown an attractive layer of feathers. I also traveled around in an armored Jeep, but that wasn't a luxury at all. We got a ton of death threats during the 3 months we spent in Israel, but I didn't think for a moment it was political. I thought for sure it was most likely a critic who'd seen my last several films. There's a picture here of Sly training for Rambo 3, and he had a good physique. He had like a solid like men's physique build, good, gets a six-pack. I mean, he had a great physique for that. Really liked Sly's physique in Rambo 3. Moving on. Rambo 3 was made before the days of computer-generated effects, so we had to do everything for real. Rappelling out of helicopters, lying under a moving tank, running through explosions. The closest call came when a French Puma helicopter banked the wrong way during the shooting of the fight scene and nearly decapitated me and one of the stuntmen. I have such admiration for the men and women who do this type of stunt work for a living, and I owe them a great deal. But I owe a horse my life. Pound for pound, the most dangerous stunt I've ever been involved with was for Rambo 3. Where Rambo is invited to play, I don't even know how to say this, Buzz Kishi, which is the scene where Well, I'll just let the book explain it. Back to the book. Which is the most dangerous game in the world. The idea is to grab the body of a 75-pound sheep and gallop several hundred yards and drop it in the circle of triumph. Sounds easy enough, except for the 20 other horsemen doing their very best to smash you into the earth. Even the compelling horses revel in the prospect of tumbling someone to the dust and delivering a well-placed kick. The danger of playing on sandy soil with its many hidden sharp-edged rocks was a formula for a deadly accident. Several horsemen went down rupturing spleens, another shattered bones in their hip, and a third rider landed so hard that he went temporarily blind for several hours. Wow, sounds pretty crazy. I remember that scene. That was a cool scene. Interestingly enough, after all that sweat, punishment, and chicken, and the near-death experience and the close call of explosions, Rambo was nearly undone by a petite woman in a Chanel suit. In Rambo 3, the Russians are depicted as America's worst nightmare, the Red Menace of the evil empire. Their involvement in Afghanistan was portrayed as Russia's Vietnam. But by the time the film premiered, the Soviet army announced the withdrawal of its troops from Afghanistan. And to make matters worse, there on every station in the world was Gorbachev kissing Nancy Reagan on the cheek. So by the time the big Russian had unpuckered, the Soviets were now our new best friends, and Rambo was the red-baiting, right-wing killing machine. Funny. All right. So last thing, last movie. And this we're going in the other direction here. The Role of a Lifetime. You might think I'd be jaded by now, but the older I get, the more I realize what a miracle this life is. It would be very easy to lose perspective, but I'm blessed to have a family that keeps me focused on the things that really matter. My wife, Jennifer, and my children are continued sources of pride, and our home is a grounding force for me. The other thing that keeps me sane through the years is the gym. For instance, when I lived in Miami in the early 90s, I had a gym in the house, and it was an excellent place to relieve stress and clarify my thoughts. I was on the verge of turning 50, an age when many people start to slow down. I certainly wasn't ready for that, and exercise was my way of gathering momentum rather than losing it. This wasn't the same punishing regimen I'd followed before. I started practicing yoga and Tai Chi and focusing more on smoothing out than bulking up. My workouts went from 25 hours a week to 3 or 4, which gave me time to pursue other interests. I don't think it's a coincidence that simplifying my workout coincided with a whole new outlook. For many years, I was incredibly competitive with myself. Each new project, every new film had to be another test in some way. As good as things were, they would always be better next time. I know I'm not alone in falling into that trap. So many people think happiness is just on the horizon. The next job, the next raise, the next car. That's the one thing that's going to make the difference. The next vacation is going to do it, or else the next gadget, or next house, or next kid. Unfortunately, life does not work that way. You can get all those things, multiply them by 100,000, and still feel unfulfilled. Part of the turnaround that has put me in a good, steady place these last 10 years was my role in a 1996 movie called Copland. Gaining 40 pounds to play a small-town New Jersey sheriff, I was able to let go of some of the very old thoughts about body image. I actually had fun packing on the pounds, and was amazed how the extra weight changed people's reaction to me. People approached me without trepidation, and I lost the edge of aggressiveness that sometimes accompanied my intense movie workouts. I'd gotten in touch with something very special that was close to my heart. Acid reflux. Just kidding. Actually, I'm not. It was one of the many problems I acquired when I gained weight. Some of the other acquaintances I made were heart palpitations, elevated blood pressure, back problems, even flatter feet. Since Copland, my professional work has taken a backseat to greater pleasures in my life. This may sound odd, but I've learned to enjoy the art of leisure time without feeling guilty. I'm still working on that. I felt incredible happiness in my marriage. And I can't even begin to describe the joy of waking up every morning to my little ones. I've also developed a healthy lifestyle that keeps me feeling better than ever with less effort than you can imagine. I rarely spend more than 3.5 hours a week in a gym, and I actually enjoy food instead of obsessing over it. I weigh almost 20 pounds more than I did when I filmed Rocky, but I've never felt physically stronger. So this is interesting. So he's talking about how he kind of changed his philosophy on training, but he touches on the movie Copland. He goes into it kind of on a briefly here, but he gained a bunch of weight. There's actually a movie with Sylvester Stallone where he's overweight and fat. It's called Copland. He writes in it in kind of like a side section here. Be like me, the gains and pains of Copland. In 1996, I starred with Robert De Niro in a film about a downtrodden small-town New Jersey cop who uncovers corruption in the NYPD. Copland got good reviews, but most people remember it for how overweight I was in it. The director insisted that my character, Sheriff Freddie Heflin, be as soft-bellied as he was sad. I decided to play him like a human turtle, slow, unsteady, terrified of the world. As soon as I read the script, I knew I'd have to gain weight, lots of weight. Over the course of 3 months, I packed on 40 pounds and went from a 31-inch waist to a 39.5-inch waist. In the process, I learned a tremendous amount about the psychology and physiology of being overweight. First, I saw how easy it was to put on pounds. I'd wake up in the morning and do nothing. No exercise, no stretching, no problem. I'd head over to a place called the Royal Canadian Pancake House. After a while, I started calling it the Trout. And eat whatever I wanted. Some days it would be 5 pancakes, some days 10, whatever I could handle. And I always topped it with mountains of whipped cream and washed it down with a big chocolate milk. These pancakes were so big, you could put an axle on them and drive home. God, I miss those days. Then again, I don't. For a while, I loved bulking up. I actually had fun. After decades of being so consistent about my weight, it was a fantastic relief to let go. But then again, the check came. I developed sciatica, heart palpitations, acid reflux, digestion problems, and headaches. My cholesterol and blood pressure levels were astronomically high. Those afternoon energy lapses soon turned into full-fledged exhaustion. And a special added bonus, I got a full-blown case of sleep apnea. In 1 year, I'd gone from the best abs to the worst. As soon as production wrapped, I went on my version of the Atkins Diet, which was about 80% protein and the rest just good fats, nuts, avocado, olive oil, things like that. So it looks like he went keto. I got back into regular cardio routine and started weight training again. I lost 40 pounds in 60 days without killing myself. I finally understood the uncomfortable situations being physically overweight puts people into, which is the reason I wanted to do this book. And that's how he ends section 1. In section 2, he pretty much goes over most of the exercises that he recommends, which, just mostly standard exercises. Then he gives a couple workouts at the end of that section. They're not really workouts, they're just kind of list of exercises to do. Nothing really too crazy. We're going to skip over that, and we're going to skip to, at the end of section 2, he has a section titled, well, there's 2 sections that we're going to talk about here. 7 ways to energize your workout. The first thing, go early. Number 1. It's easier just to feel motivated in the mornings, which is why I get to the gym around 10:45. That's a bit late for some people, but my energy level is still high at that time, and I'm not distracted by the commitments of the day. Getting my heart rate up early pretty much guarantees I'll feel positive and vital for the rest of the day. Perhaps that's why the people who exercise most consistently, according to various studies, are the ones who do it early in the morning. That is true. Another thing you'll see is a lot of very successful people, a lot of successful entrepreneurs tend to train in the morning. I go back and forth. Sometimes I train in the afternoon. Sometimes I train in the morning. There is something to be said for getting a workout done out of the way first thing in the morning as early as possible. Like 10:45 is a little late for me. But man, when I was in high school, I used to train first thing in the morning. I'd train at 6 o'clock before school every single day. I was super consistent with it. One thing was good is you didn't have to worry about it. Like if you knock it out first thing in the morning, like you don't have to worry about it for the rest of the day. It's easy to be on that hashtag consistency life when you're training first thing in the morning. Now, from a performance standpoint, I just find that in the afternoon I perform better. I get a few meals in me. I'm able to drink water all day. Just, that 2 o'clock period seems to be the sweet spot for me. But the problem with that is from a work standpoint, well, there's a couple problems. One is the gym tends to get busy in the afternoon, later afternoon. And then from a work standpoint, sometimes like I have a lot of meetings in the afternoons, and sometimes I'll get busy with a project and then I don't really get to a cutting off point, and then I'll end up, getting lost in my work, and then it'll be 2:30, 3 o'clock, and I'm like, oh shit, I got to get around for the gym. And So there is that issue, breaking up the day. When you train first thing in the morning, once you start work, I mean, you can just plow through it. And for most people who work a normal job, I mean, I have a flexible schedule, but if you work a normal job, say you work a 9 to 5 job, I mean, your best option probably would be 6 o'clock. I mean, 6, 7 o'clock, first thing in the morning. Because, you work all day, you're probably fatigued, tired, wanting to go home. By the time you travel, get to the gym, it's like 5:36. You work out for a little bit. By the time you get home, it's like 8. And now it's like, shit, you got to get around, eat dinner and take a shower. It's like watch one show and go to bed. So, I don't know. There's a lot to be said for morning training, especially if you're a morning person. If you can wake up early, I mean, I recommend giving it a shot. Another thing, so second thing to energize your workout, dress the part. You go to the gym to look and feel better. Start with what you're wearing. Wear something that makes you feel like an athlete or comfortable or sexy or all the above. It's a sign of respect for what you're doing. I see guys rolling out of bed, celebrities by the way, wearing these big wrinkled t-shirts, hair all messed up. It's like they're in denial that they're actually at a gym. And guess what? Their workouts are just as uninspired. I actually agree with this. I've always had this philosophy that if you look good, you perform good. For all the sports I ever played, like I always wanted the nice wrestling shoes, the nice socks, like they're just like I always like to look good. And then in the gym, I always like to have nice workout clothes. It's not even like a fashion statement. I just want to look nice. I don't even care if other people think it looks nice. I just want, me personally, I want it to look nice. Because if it feels good, feels comfortable, fits well, makes you look good, you walk in a good mood. You're like, shit, I'm looking good. And trust me, this is 100% factual. I have better workouts if I'm wearing clothes I like than not. As crazy as that sounds, as motivated and disciplined as I am, don't get me wrong, I can wear anything and have a good workout, but there's just something about wearing clothes that fit just right, a t-shirt that fits you just right, and getting a good training session. I don't know. I think you should, if you're going to spend money on anything, spend it on something to make you look nice. And honestly, look at the fitness industry. I mean, there's a reason why, the fitness industry is blown up. The apparel industry, the workout equipment, the knee sleeves, wrist wraps, the shoes, the shirts, the shorts. There's a big industry of selling people workout clothes because of this reason. Not alone here. Number 3, fuel up. Never go to the gym on an empty stomach. You need something in the engine, preferably high-octane fuel. Eating a small piece of fruit and some healthy carbs within 15 to 30 minutes of exercising elevates blood sugar levels, which helps kickstart the workout. A small bowl of oatmeal with some peaches or melon does the trick. So does a banana and a handful of almonds. Those are all great sources. Okay. Then he says, above all, drink water before, during, and after work. That's definitely, so out of all that, never go to the gym on an empty stomach. I kind of agree with that, but then again, there's a lot of people who train fasted and do well. For clients that train fasted, for the most part, what I like to do is I'll just say, hey, if you don't want to eat anything, you don't want to have any carbs or anything pre-training, you want nothing really in your stomach, just have a scoop of protein. Just have a scoop of protein with water. Some people will say branched chain amino acids, but for me, it's just, hey, just grab a scoop of protein, 25 grams of protein or so, and just have that. And you can just sip on it while you're on your way to the gym, while you're drinking your pre-workout or whatever, or ideally have it before you even leave the house. Just pound a protein shake real quick and then make your pre-workout up and then take that in the way. Just to have some protein in your system, just to have an extra protein feeding in there. And I recommend that. Ideally you'd have a whole meal. Like me personally, I recommend not training fasted lifting-wise. I just think that, hey, we want to have a little fuel in our belly. We want to get a good workout in. And there's no real added benefit per se. Other than if you're following an intermittent fasting approach and that fits your schedule best and allows you to stay in a caloric deficit best, then yeah, there can be some benefits there. But really all that is shifting calories later in the day. So having a scoop of protein pre-training we're just talking about protein. It's like, okay, you're subtracting 25 grams of protein from your macros for the day. It's not that big of a deal. But I would recommend that. And then, of course, water. Especially if you're training early in the morning, make sure you're getting some water. But more than just water, make sure you're getting some electrolytes too. So add some salt, or preferably like some salt and magnesium, a little bit of potassium pre-training. Whether that's you add some pink Himalayan sea salt to your water, or just drink like Gatorade or Powerade Zero will do some good, or just add some salt to your pre-workout. I've recommended that for clients too. Sometimes just add like a fourth of a teaspoon of sea salt or just regular table salt to your pre-workout. Sounds a little crazy, but trust me, hydration is key. Number 4, Java Man. I believe in slamming back a mega dose of coffee before working out. Caffeine helps prime the pump and gives you a natural lift. Many people, myself included, find that it delays fatigue and diminishes the overall sense of exertion, which makes exercise more fun. It also increases alertness, speeds the body's ability to metabolize fat, and stimulates the release of free fatty acids, which are used for energy when you exercise. There are other health benefits too. In 2004, a Harvard School of Public Health study found a firm link between coffee and the prevention of type 2 or adult onset diabetes. Men in the study who drank 6 or more cups of coffee a day, shit, that's a lot, reduced their diabetes risk by 54%. I'm a big fan of caffeine pre-training, whether you get it from coffee, whether you get it from a pre-workout, an energy drink. I'm a big fan of caffeine pre-training. There's quite a bit of research on it, showing it beneficial and helping you improve performance. That's why I recommend Materia. That's why I recommend caffeine pre-training. It's something that's been shown to be effective, and that's why it's so popular too. That's why pre-workouts are so popular, energy drinks are so popular, is because it's one supplement that works. It's very easy. You take it and you feel energized, you feel better, in a better mood, you get a better workout. Number 5, get thee to a trainer. Can you do it alone? Yes. Can you do it better with someone else? Absolutely. For the uninitiated, there's a lot of strange equipment in the gym, and you need to be an expert to take you through the paces. Even if it costs a few dollars, the guidance will save you medical and chiropractic bills down the road, not to mention the psychological advantage you get. I've been working out for 40 years, and I still find myself looking for excuses to slack off in the gym. That's why I need somebody else, somebody who's paid to kick my butt into shape. I think Sly still to this day works out with Gunnar Peterson. He's like a celebrity trainer out in LA, works with a lot of movie stars, even athletes. But yeah, I've talked about this a lot. I'm an online coach. I've been training people since I was 17. I've been doing it for the last 10 years. You guys know I believe in coaching, but there's a reason why most of the most successful people in fitness, whether they're fitness celebrities, movie stars, or just your average person, the people who are most successful in the gym have a coach. Number 6, play that funky music. Just make sure it's something that moves you. Everyone has a musical preference, and usually it's a generational thing. Really, yeah, music. Yeah, put some music on in the gym. If your gym has shitty music, wear headphones. And then number 7, follow the beat. Wearing a heart rate monitor takes your workout to a whole new level. You can see how many calories you're burning, watch your heart rate improve over time, and see where you stand against the standard for your age and weight. Many of the new devices let you download data to your computer, where you can track and analyze your workouts. Yeah, heart rate. I like to use heart rate for kind of give us some parameters around, how intense our cardio needs to be. Those are all good seven things to keep in mind. Moving on to section 3, we're just going to talk very briefly. We'll finish this up, wrap this up. Really, section 1 was all I really want to talk about. I just find it really interesting, all the side stories Sly talks about with the movies, the Rocky and Rambo, how he trained for them, and kind of the process of filming them. But in section 3, he talks about his diet. Want to dig into this a little bit. Section 3. Let's get one thing out of the way up front. Diets don't work forever. Believe me, I've tried them all. At various points, I've eaten only chicken, only meat, only vegetables, and only yogurt. And I've frequently relied on a Greek fisherman's diet. All seafood all the time. I've tried low carbs, no carbs, high altitude, low carbs, even mountain climber, high altitude, high carbs. From Cliffhanger. A new diet is like a new romance. Every time you start one, the results are different. Exciting, sometimes intense, and the diets promise that they'll always be there for you, always care for you. And you believe it with your whole being. Then the passion begins to cool along with your promise that Mr. Diet will take all your worries away. You got taken because you wanted so badly to believe. Look, any diet will work for a while. I could put you on a limited whipped cream diet and you'll lose weight. It's like the guy who ate Subway sandwiches and dropped 245 pounds. Oh man, Jared, I forgot about him. He put his mind to it, exercised every day, reduced his overall caloric intake, and followed a regimented plan. The pounds are going to come off that way. If you stop eating just one slice of bread a day, you'll lose 8 to 10 pounds a year doing nothing else. It bothers me to see so many people out there cutting carbohydrates. out of their diet. The high protein, low carb craze is nothing but a setup for frustration and failure, not to mention all sorts of potential health problems. Our bodies need carbohydrates. We crave them. And if we slash them out of our lives, we're just asking for trouble. Plus, answer this. If the Atkins, South Beach, and other diets work so well, why can't most of us name 5 people on them who've lost weight and kept the weight off for a year or more? It doesn't happen. For every 100 people who lose weight, a whopping 95% will gain it back and more. Really, that's what I wanted to talk about. Really, he's picking on low-carb diets, which I really agree. I mean, keto-style diets, really low-carb diets are hard. I mean, they're hard to stick to, and then as soon as you go off of them, I mean, shit, the weight comes right back. But really, this is the problem. Diets do work. Any caloric restricted diet will work. Some are better than the others, but they all work as long as you can stick to them. The problem people have is once you transition from a fat loss phase, what happens then? And this is something I talk about with clients a lot, but the hardest time to ever diet in your life. Most people think it's during a fat loss phase. It's actually not. The absolute hardest time to diet is immediately following a fat loss phase. So let's say you go on a diet, you set up your macros, you're doing everything right, you're hitting all your numbers, you're going slow, nice and steady approach, you lose 20 pounds. You're like, great, hit my goal, lost 20 pounds, did everything right during the diet, took 4 to 6 months, did nice and slow, maintained training intensity, everything is good, did a perfect cut. Okay, so now we want to transition back out of the cut, do a recovery style diet, add calories back in, get back up to a maintenance caloric intake as quick as possible, and then eventually get to a caloric surplus, as quick as possible. That period of time is always the hardest because, well, for a couple of reasons. One, psychologically, it's like, oh, the diet's over. The diet's over. I accomplished my goals. So now you're like, you're kind of lacking motivation a little bit. And you've been deprived for so long during the cutting process. But the problem was the motivation to get lean, the motivation working towards the goal, the date on the calendar, pushed you through. It made it seem like it wasn't as hard as it was. But then once you accomplish that goal and you start adding calories back in, it seems like you hit the finish line. It's over. It's done with. And I'm talking about people who work with me, working with a coach, and are highly motivated. Imagine people just out on the street who pick up a fad diet and lose some weight and then decide to transition off from it. People always say it's a lifestyle. Yes, it is a lifestyle. Yeah, big picture, we want this fitness thing to be a lifestyle. That's how you're going to be most successful. But you do need periods of time when you want to lose fat, and it's an all-out fight. Like, yeah, a fat loss phase is not sustainable. I think that's another mistake people made is they think that, well, I don't know if they think it, but they try to make fat loss sustainable, like as in, hey, I'm going to be on this fat loss diet forever. Well, you shouldn't be on a fat loss diet forever. Yeah, you want to go slow and steady. That's the best way to do it. But you got to recognize, like, hey, whenever you're on a fat loss phase, eventually, yeah, we're getting out of it. Like, we want to get out of it. We want to get out of a deficit, and we want to get back into a surplus. That's, for the most part, that's what we want to do. That's how you make the most progress. You want to spend more time out of a deficit than you spend in a deficit. But how to manage that is what's tricky, because you don't want to lose a bunch of weight and then just add a bunch of fat and more on, which is what most people do. That's the problem. People can lose weight, but they can't maintain it. That's the real problem. So, Sly mentioned it, but it's something I've talked about a lot before. A lot of it's just control. How can we maintain control? Not only while we're dieting, while we're losing fat, but at all times. And that's really why I push consistency so much and just trying to build in these healthy habits, those consistency habits day in, day out. So when we're in complete control, we can move a little bit up or down. We can add some calories, lose some calories, and be in complete control of our body composition with small fluctuations. That's what I try to do with my clients and clients that's been with me for a long time. That's what we do. We build in that consistency so strong that, we can, and I'm not saying it has to be 100% strict all the time. There's periods when you need to be strict, and there's periods where you can have more flexibility and not be as strict. Just all part of the process, all part of that consistency. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. I think it went a little bit longer than I expected. Really, I just wanted to read a lot of that first section. And I kind of didn't even really do a whole lot of commentary just because I wanted to read it. And I hope you guys found that interesting. If you hadn't read this book, it's probably some cool information. It wasn't a terrible lot of information about how he trained. Really, I just wanted to emphasize that, yeah, so when Sly trained for Rocky 3, Rocky 4, Rambo 2 and 3, yeah, he did a lot of shit, a lot of volume. a lot of volume. He trained a little bit with Franco Columbu, and then, I think he kind of just took what he learned from him and just added to it. And, that was the volume age. So I'm sure he was, sure he wasn't exaggerating too much when he talked about just training pretty much all day long. But, that's kind of what they did. I mean, back in Arnold's day in the 70s, they trained pretty much all day long. He used to do twice a day training for 3-4 hours at a time. So they did a ton of volume. They also did a fair amount of steroids too, so that probably played a part. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed the episode. Let me know. Hit me up on Instagram @HuntFitness. Let me know what you thought of the podcast. And hey, remember in the beginning I said I have a unique opportunity for my powerlifting friends out there. If you want to take your training to the next level, send me an email, kylehuntfitness@gmail.com. Let's get you set up. Now is the time, I'm telling you. If you want to just try a training program, the Absolute Strength Training Program, version 1 or 2, Absolute Progress Power Building Program, one of my bench press specialization programs, the link are in the show notes. If you want an Absolute Strength Podcast t-shirt or Hunt Fitness t-shirt, link is in the show notes. And of course, if you want some PR Breaker materia, the pre-workout I use and recommend, or the protein powder I use and recommend, and I love that shit. I'm going to make some up right now. Hit point, use the discount code HUNT10 to save yourself some money. Help support the show. PRBreaker.com. Peace, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Absolute Strength Podcast. I know I had a ton of fun producing it for you. And before you go, if you could just drop me some feedback, I'd love it. I love reading your feedback. So you can go over to iTunes, leave a 5-star rating, write a little review, what you think of the podcast. I absolutely love it. I read every single one. But it's cool if you don't want to do that. I get it. No one wants to really go out of their way to do anything, let alone write a review. But I want to get your feedback. So drop me a line on Instagram @HuntFitness, or on Facebook, Kyle Hunt, or on Twitter, or send a pigeon or something. I don't know. I just want to hear your feedback. So if you want to give me some feedback, let me know what you think. Hit me up on Instagram @HuntFitness. And before you go, I have one last thing I want to say. I have a program I want you to check out. It's actually called the Absolute Strength Program, and the link is in the show notes. It's a program I designed to help increase my own squat, bench, and deadlift. And I got pretty strong off of it, and I think you're going to like it. It's a great book. Thousands of people have got amazing results from it. It's in the show notes. All right, guys. Until next time, until next episode, peace.